I'd like to call to order the January 4th Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. And Ms. Nestor Jelen, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Margaret Clements.
Here.
Skip Daly.
Here via Zoom.
Okay, and just a reminder, Skip and Dee, since you both are virtual, whenever you vote, if you could just turn the camera on and make sure that your video is showing so that we can see and hear you. Pamela Davidson.
Here.
Guy Loftman.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Okay, so we have 5 members, 3 in person and a quorum.
Is there a motion to introduce the evidence?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce the evidence. I will introduce the following items. The Monroe County Comprehensive Land Use Plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Zoning Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Subdivision Control Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended. And the cases advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
Also move.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the evidence. Skip Daly,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
yes,
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Okay, introduction of evidence passes 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, I will call the roll on improving the agenda as proposed. There has been one request for a continuance on the agenda. If you'd like, I can go over that first, or we can approve the agenda as is, and then you can approve or deny that continuance.
Let's approve the agenda as is and then
Okay.
approve or deny the continuance of
Okay.
with the whatever case it is.
Okay, so I will go ahead and call the roll to approve the agenda as advertised. Has there been a move and a second on that?
Yes.
Okay. Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
yes,
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Okay, the agenda has been approved 5-0.
There are no minutes to approve tonight. However, on administrative business, there are 2 items I'd like to bring up. And that is that at our next February meeting, we'll have elections of officers. And that we also may at that time entertain a few changes to our rules and procedures, because we had talked the last time about creating a consent agenda. And if we'd like to consider that, we'll debate it and deliberate it at our February meeting, as long as we can get the information to planning staff in advance so that they can post the proposed changes. And we can have that on our agenda under administrative business the next time. Okay, so there's no old business. And with that being said, the first item on our agenda tonight is VAR 22-38. And that concerns a property at 8482 South Fairfax. And it's a use variance for hotel use from chapter 802 concerning 3 16.63 plus or minus acre parcels in Clear Creek Township, section 14. And I'm sorry, sir, our procedure normally is that the staff will introduce the case, and then we'll ask the petitioner to present give us his argument for the petition, and that can take about 15 minutes. And then we'll ask those in support of the petition to have a 3-minute statement in support. And then those against will have an opportunity to speak, and then you may rebut for about 5 minutes. And then we'll move it to a vote. Okay, thank you, sir.
Chair?
Yes.
If,
Yes,
if I
Ms.
could, yes, if I could just let everybody know that I am recused from this, so I'll be going off camera and off video until the vote is over.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Owens. How will we let you know?
Well, I'll watch you. You just can't watch me.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, so with that being said, I believe Ms. Crecilius is going to be presenting this case.
Yeah, so Margaret, we have the rules of procedure up on the screen. So if your introduction of the case, we're actually going to start with the petitioner presenting their case first. And then if you have questions for the petitioner or for staff, including whether you want them to run through any information, then we can do that certainly.
Oh, so I was in error. Okay, so I'm sorry, sir, for the confusion. If you would kindly come up to the podium and sign in.
And at this time, Margaret, it says the chairperson introduces the case and may set time limits for individual responses. So if you want to set time limits for individual responses, i.e. that could be the supporters, remonstrators, time
Yes.
for rebuttal.
So the petitioner has 15 minutes to present.
Okay,
The people speaking both in favor and in opposition to the petition have 3 minutes per person. And then the rebuttal is 5 minutes.
okay.
Okay. And so, sir, once you've signed in, if you would kindly raise your right hand and state your name. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And what is your name, sir? I think your microphone may not be on. It would be the button on the right that would turn green. No. Okay,
How's that?
that's much
All right.
better. Thank you, Mr. Gilman.
Thank you. Again, my name is David Gilman and I'm representing Renewing Properties LLC. My office address is 211 South Ritter Avenue, Indianapolis 46219. I do want to thank the board. We've been on your agenda for a while. I've had a conflict the very first time that we were on the agenda with another hearing. Then there was, I think, a quorum that put me into another conflict, but we're pleased that we're able to present today. And we're excited about our proposed project. Renewing Properties LLC is petitioning the board tonight to establish a 10,000 square foot, 10-bedroom home to allow for short-term lodging. In your chapter 802 of the ordinance, there is a definition for a tourist home, but that limits it to 4 bedrooms. Anything greater than 5 bedrooms, technically by definition, would be considered a hotel. The difference in the distinction from what we're asking this board to consider in our use variance versus the definition of a hotel, or what you typically would think of as a hotel, is that you would have to lease the entire 10-bedroom single-family home. We're not interested in leasing any individual bedrooms or half the home. It's basically going to be a luxury, short-term leasing, 10,000 square foot home for families or group. Renewing Management bought this property about a year ago with the idea that it would be a perfect place for families to experience nature, wildlife, Monroe Reservoir, and it allowed them a place to have family vacations, maybe retreats, and or celebrate milestone events. The 10,000 square foot home needs a lot of interior work, and I have photos of the inside and outside I'll share with you. But Renewing Management has the resources and the experience to see this home all the way through permits, construction, and occupancy. They own and manage over 4,000 apartment units throughout Indiana. And the majority of their communities have been distressed, where they've gone in, they've renovated them, they provided modern lifestyles for the apartment units, and a very secured and safe environment for all of their residents. If we could go to the first slide, please. Second slide. Okay, so what I've done as part of the submittal requirement, I provided the Board of Zoning Appeals and the staff with our narrative, our letter of intent, and that pretty clearly explains what we intend to do with the property, how we plan to use the property, and self-imposed restrictions that we've placed on the property and or the variance shall it be granted. Again, the emphasis is even though it's defined as a hotel, you must lease the entire home. Only the overnight guest will be able to have any type of event there, which means there'll be no daytime events at this facility or this home. It's only for those people that rent the entire building that are staying there. Next slide, please. This is the blue arrow points to the residence on this property. It's 16 acres. Believe it or not, where that blue arrow is pointing is really the only constructible area for a home on the entire 16 acres. The remaining area to the west and in front of the home is heavy woodland, but the slopes are all greater than 15%. So really the only thing that we have on this property is you have the footprint of the home. There has been an area in the rear that's been cleared where a septic system with the capacity to handle a 10-bedroom home has been installed recently. And then the rest of it, as I mentioned, is just covered in beautiful mature woodland. Next slide, please. This slide, I think I stole this from the staff report, but this is a good illustration of where the home sits in relationship to the road. It's 1,200 feet off of Fairfax. You can't see the home from Fairfax. And then the nearest neighboring residence is about 820 feet away through the wooded area. You also see the broad orange stripes on the map. That basically is the floodway of Monroe Reservoir. That area all the way up through the back is pretty much considered just a natural wetland area. And then anything covered in woods outside of the perimeter of the house is the extensive wooded area that is virtually going to remain untouched. At the entrance on this, you'll see a self-storage business immediately to the north of our entrance. Across the street at Fairfax, I think there are some older apartment homes. But there is a little bit of a mixed use as you approach our entrance up in north and south of the proposed property. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is a good map that illustrates the isolation of this unit and how protected the adjoining neighbors will be now and even after the proposed use if the variance is granted. Again, that wooded area cannot really be touched and it provides a lot of extensive natural buffer with mature trees, unique topography to all the neighbors. Next slide, please. Again, as part of our variance request, we've entered self-proposed conditions of our approval. One of them is a plan of operation, and we've outlined that. I won't regurgitate it because I believe it's been in your staff packet. You've had time to look at it, but it covers the proposed use as short-term for the entire home. The residents will always retain that residential architectural orientation and rural characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. That will not change. The trees will continue to serve as that natural buffer. And then other areas, we provided provisions for guests that are coming to the property, provisions for security, restrictions on lighting, signage. The traffic that would be expected to be generated would be very low. And then off-street parking. We have some parking that's been provided, in the building itself. But there is room, level area up front. There's a big horseshoe drive that if needed, we could provide some off-street parking in front of the building as well. Now, what the staff has suggested is, should the board decide to support us and approve the variance, that they would like for us to go through a commercial site plan review. We will agree to that. That site plan review would cover the details of parking, landscaping, erosion control, grading, drainage, so that we're not infringing or impacting our adjoining neighbors on our common boundaries. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do, because this property is not easily visible and we do have a security gate up front, I wanted to provide some inside and exterior photos to give you a better perspective of the building. And this is obviously an overhead view. The water area to the back is the overflow area for the reservoir, but you can see that it is completely surrounded by a beautiful wooded, mature treed area. Next slide, please. This is a front elevation as it exists today, and then a roof elevation. Again, the exterior shell is complete, very secure. It's quite remarkable that after 23 years of this property sitting there vacant, how good of condition the exterior has remained. There have been a couple of broken windows. When I went out there, my speculation is that deer have seen their reflection and hit it with their antlers, because I did see some fur where I think they've broken it, spooking themselves. But there's a lot of wildlife that come up to the property, and I do have a couple more exteriors. Next slide, please. Oh, so right there, the first slide to the left, this house was built with 3 two-car garages on the lower level. So technically we could accommodate 6 cars inside the home itself. And then I wanted to show you, as I tell you how the property falls off in excessive slopes, I just wanted to show you how the house was constructed. Where that retaining wall is, on the opposite side of that is the septic area. But you can see how the house is much taller on one side than the other, and that's because of the natural topography starts to fall off into the wooded area. Next slide, please. This is something that not many people have viewed. This is the interior of this home. It's almost, it's been like this for over 2 decades. But if you look at the main entrance, those are the 2 front doors. You see the first level is mostly sheetrocked and drywalled, but unfinished. Then you have the wooden stairs that go up to the second level that is obviously needs additional work. And this is the first level. Next slide, please. Thank you. On the second level, we have some that are completely unfinished, no sheetrock, but all the plumbing, electrical, and HVAC is installed for the original footprint as it was laid out on these 3 levels. But it does require a lot more attention and more work to be occupied. Next slide, please. And then this is the 3rd level. And as you can see, the higher you go, the less work that's been done. And what we've done is we do have an estimate of what it would cost to finish out this structure, and it's about $800,000. So we're in it, to be honest, transparent, we're in it about 1.6 million just to get this house occupied, not even staged, but completely finished with tile, paint, and appliances and all the infrastructure that's needed on the interior. So my final slide, please. So what I've done is I've shared the findings of fact because I think it's very important part of your decision-making process for today. We believe we met the findings for a use variance. We do have a 16-acre piece of property that is unique. It's uniquely shaped. It's part of a mixed-use area along Fairfax Road. It's been vacant for 23 years. If there were a user or a buyer that wanted to purchase this home as a single-family dwelling, we've had some very good times in our economy. It would have been a good piece to snatch up. Crickets. My client bought it because he felt that it would be a great opportunity to use the resources and experience they have in rehabbing larger structures, and then offering the place to allow people to experience beautiful Monroe County near the reservoir in the Four Seasons. We don't think the grant will interfere or be injurious to the general public because all the construction inside and out will be done to the city code, county requirements before it can be occupied. And I think just recently the septic's been installed to accommodate a 10-bedroom. So the septic's good, the construction will be completed and supervised through the county. And then again, Should you grant the variance, we would agree to go through the commercial site plan review with your staff. The home is well buffered and would have, in our opinion, no adverse impact on adjacent property values. We have no intention of removing those trees or doing any clearing. That's part of the beauty of the isolation of this property that we've seen. We're not requesting a rezoning. We're only asking you to grant us a very specific use subject to a plan of operation, commercial site plan review, and the residential elevations and the footprint as you see it today. Given the immediate area is mixed use, some general business, some multifamily, some single family, it's close proximity to the reservoir and another commercial hotel. We hope the board agrees that what we propose will be a responsible and a reasonable use for this property. With that, I would be available to answer questions that board members, staff, or members of the audience would have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Gilman. And I turn now to my colleagues here and online. And if you have questions for Mr. Gilman.
Yes, thank you. The findings of fact, where do those come from? They aren't in our package. So who found those facts?
I prepared them.
You prepared the
Yes.
findings of fact. Okay.
And what I wanted to do is demonstrate, in our opinion, in our presentation to this board, how we think we've met the findings
I
of
see.
for use.
I see. And we have lots of material about the septic system. So is that all passed? Inspection, everything's fine with the septic? Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe now that you've raised the issue, Ms. Davidson, I'd like to ask staff, do you agree with Mr. Gilman's findings of facts?
So the staff, those are the criteria that are set out for a use variance. We also have those included in the packet. One of the more difficult challenges to overcome is the unnecessary hardship finding for use variances. So we can go into a little bit of our discussion on those if you would like, if that's the question from the board at this time.
Yes, I'd like, if you would be so kind, as well as whether or not an approval would substantially interfere with the comprehensive plan and for surrounding homes, because your recommendation is denial.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think Anne has prepared the standards for approval on the screen here. So I think we might also pull up okay, so at the bottom you have hardship or unnecessary hardship. A significant injury that arises from the strict application of this ordinance to the conditions of a particular existing parcel of property effectively deprive the parcel owner of all reasonable economic use of the parcel and is clearly more significant than compliance cost or practical difficulties. So I think if any of these are denied, similar to design standards variances, we're unable to offer a recommendation of approval. And since this property is zoned for single family use, as well as other uses are permitted in this district, we don't believe that it effectively deprives the parcel owner of all reasonable economic use.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nestor Jelen. I saw Mr. Daly's hand up on Zoom and I thought he had a question. So Mr. Daly? You're
Good
muted.
evening.
Hi.
Good evening. My question to the petitioner is, how do you see our approval impacting any potential ADA regulations? I've not seen that addressed here. You're talking about commercial use, and I'm just curious as to how you're addressing that. Are there ADA regulations that would apply to this should we approve this, and what are they?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Ann and I have actually talked about that. The agreement between the petitioner and the staff to go through a commercial plan review would cover that exact criteria for ADA compliant ramps, ADA compliant parking stalls, and whatever else accommodations need to be made so that it is legal and it is accessible by all members of the public. So that would be covered as a condition of this use approval, sir.
All right, and part of the reason why I ask is because that picture of the wonderfully two-decade rest, unaffected really by time, with those uncovered steps. Is there an elevator? How would folks get from the first floor up to the other floors?
Well, there would be no elevator, I don't believe, unless that's a state requirement that I'm unfamiliar with. But I do know a certain percentage of the rooms would have to be ADA compliant. They would have to be similar rooms that you enjoy on the third floor or the second floor. We have to make those same accommodations to an ADA compliant room on the first floor. So
Okay.
our first floor rooms would be the ADA compliant rooms.
Okay, that makes sense. So there are rooms on that first floor which are being proposed.
Yes, and if there aren't, we would have to accommodate that.
All right, I appreciate your time. That clears it up for me.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. This property, you said, sat vacant for how long before crickets, you said, no one came forward? And was it 8-bedroom and now it's 10-bedroom? So it was always very spacious?
My understanding, it was constructed as a 10-bedroom in the year 2000. Staff can provide a little bit more insight. One or two of the builders, the original grandmother allowed her grandson, I think, to build it for her. They didn't do very well and it never got completed. A couple of other builders, I think, have stepped in over the years and have tried to complete it. They never were successful, but it's always been a 10-bedroom, 10,000 square foot home.
Wow.
And it has been marketed. And if you look at it, it may have been sold once, maybe twice over that time frame. And it's a situation that if you wanted a single family home, a big one, would you build you a new one or would you buy one that's half done that's been sitting vacant for 23 years? I think that's the scary part. That doesn't bother my client because they're experts in rehabilitation because of their apartment communities, their experience and their resources. And so that wasn't as worrisome to them as being able to use it for something that they think would be a better use than trying to put $1.8 million in it and flip it, see if you could make a buck, because I don't think that would be a very good business move.
So you're telling us it's never been occupied?
Never been, it's not even finished.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the second and third floor is still framing studs. Only the first floor has sheetrock. Now they do have, don't let this fool you, a creative realtor has gone online and put virtual furniture in it. If it were finished, this is what it could look like to try to market it. Still nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loftman, do you have questions for Mr. Gilman, our staff?
No, I'm ready to make a motion
Well, we need to hear from the public.
when the public has completed their discussion.
We
Okay.
also have records of the property transfers, if you would be interested, from the GIS system, just to see how often this property has been switched hands. We can
Yes.
put it on the screen.
And I see that Mr. Daly has his hand raised
Oh,
again. So Mr. Daly?
I heard you mention if Guy has questions for staff or the petitioner.
Yes.
I'm not sure now that we've gone petitioner, then staff, is now the appropriate time to ask question for legal real quick?
Yes.
All right, my question is for legal. Is there a concern with this petition that this could set a precedent that we are not looking for in the county to create opportunities for temporary rentals. I guess I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. This decision would not create a precedent for any other petition. And you're basing your decision on the facts and the circumstances of this case.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. And Ms. Nestor Jelen, if you would be so kind as to share the property transfer information you had alluded to.
And if I might, can we have copies of those findings of fact?
Well, they're the petitioner's findings of fact.
I know, but I thought it might be helpful if or I guess it's hard for me to see it on that screen.
Yes, Ms. Nestor Jelen, if you would be so kind as to put up, or Ms. Crecelius, the petitioner's findings of fact.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly on this screen is that property transfer history as shown on Elevate GIS for Monroe County. So we can see since 2000, it has been under multiple different entities.
We don't see that. We just see the Nat Hill courtroom in the clock. So.
Okay, there we go.
Two.
Is that better?
So since 2000, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 transfers. Is that it? So 8 transfers. So it seems as though it has been purchased several times. Okay.
And I will pull up those findings of fact that the petitioner
Yes.
supplied.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No, I would only point out the really purchases are the warranty deeds as opposed to the quitclaim. It looks like internal family members may have quitclaimed it to other siblings and or in-laws, but I know we purchased it in the 22 renewed properties by warranty deed. 2012 was the last warranty deed. And then back in 2000. So technically I see 1, 2, 3, 4 true transfers of ownership.
Thank
As
you for
opposed
that.
to,
Thank you for that perspective. Thank you. Okay, and here, Mr. Lockman, are the findings of fact that the petitioner.
I have a copy, sir, if you would like.
Oh, I would love to see that.
Yes.
If you have a copy, I could.
And he can scan that while we open up the floor to the public who may wish to speak in favor of this petition. If there is a member of the public in this room or online, please come to the podium in the room or raise your virtual hand on Zoom or press *9 on the telephone if you're attending by phone. So if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this petition, we would like you to give you an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Do you see anyone online or on the telephone? Okay, and there's no one in the room. Is there anyone here in the room, online, or on the telephone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? I don't see anyone here in the room. Do you see anyone online or? Okay, then then I don't believe there's need for a rebuttal because there were no arguments against. And so we move back to the board and we can consider this or have a motion.
Well, from my perspective, talk about unique. Here's a 23-year-old property that's never been occupied, never can be occupied unless somebody comes in and saves it. And we have somebody who's willing to come in and save it, put a lot of money into it. I see no possible other use. Nobody's going to buy it for a private residence. And if they wanted to, they would have. So it seems to me that all the conditions are met. And after we've had a chance for discussion, I'll be
Yes.
prepared to make a motion to that effect.
Yes, and I would just like to speak on behalf of the comprehensive plan, that the comprehensive plan has this zoned as residential. And that this is a strong variation from that. And so I think it would set a precedent around the lake as far as commercial development is concerned. And even though when the trees are filled out, it's true that it can't be seen by neighboring properties, that that when the tree leaves are down, that perhaps it would alter the character of the area. And as we've seen, you know, perhaps since the decision was made to sell the property, you know, and take it outside of the family, there have been several occasions on which that has happened. So I don't see yet that no additional value could be had in the current zoning with a preference for residential. I don't think those choices have been exhausted, or that the value for the property cannot be achieved in some other way. That's my feeling.
Well, the property is going to be there.
Yes,
The house is going to be there no matter how it's used or continues to not be used. So I think and if it was a family that had 10 bedrooms used, from my perspective, which was the intended residential use, it wouldn't have a very different impact on this. And I don't, to me, the alternative is to have this resource deteriorate and go further to waste. And that's why I find it compelling.
and so is your motion to approve it?
Well, I'd be happy to hear from the other members of the board if anybody wants to express themselves, because I pay attention to what they say.
In my mind, the facts that it has sat for 23 years and it's never been finished, has never been occupied. The state of it, the number of transfers, and Guy, you're right. A large family, cheaper by the dozen. There would be kids coming all the time with cars and work activities and friends and all those things. So it could get the same kind of use. So I worry too about a wasting asset that 23 years with no occupancy and never done. And it's a miracle it hasn't fallen into timbers out there and just been a lost and a waste. So I see the usefulness in what you're seeing, Guy.
And do any of the, does Mr. Daly have any thing to add here? Mr. Daly?
The only thing I'm going to add on one of your comments was it's hidden when the trees are in bloom. I drive down that road quite often. You can't see it throughout any season. It's very set back. So I don't think that that's a concern of mine, and I don't.
Oh, you're muted again. Sorry, Mr. Daly.
I don't think I'm trying to convince you otherwise, but I think that's a non-issue for me, whether it can be seen. And I'm not sure if all of the hardships have been met or not at this point, but I would think that the market has spoken for 2+ decades, and I think that goes a long way. You know, if we can do something, if this has no negative environmental impact, no negative safety issues, and no nuisance value at this point, and it's not setting a precedent as legal has mentioned, I'm willing to entertain Mr. Laughlin's motion.
So if there is a formal motion to approve this. We also need a condition subject to a commercial site plan review.
Right.
So
Okay, I move to approve variance 22-38, 8482 South Fairfax Road use variance for hotel use from chapter 802. Subject to the conditions that have been set forth for commercial review of the property, full septic compliance, ADA as stated, which will be part of the commercial review, and use only according to the plan, which is part of the application, and I believe binding on the current owners and any subsequent owners. I feel that it will not be injurious to the public health, safety, or morals to take this property, which is wasting, and make it useful, and it will have a appropriate occupant, appropriate use. Adjacent properties, nobody's very close, and it can't help anybody's property values to have a derelict building in the neighborhood, which is eventually going to get vandalized and burned down if nobody saves it. It is a very peculiar condition of property to have a 10-bedroom house built and never occupied, never finished, and that several people have tried to salvage, and that is a very unique condition, and it sounds like a wonderful site and a wonderful opportunity to create a valuable resource for the county. The strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would be an unusual and necessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought, in light of the unusual and necessary hardship created by the current condition of the property. And I don't think it interferes with the comprehensive plan, because nobody is ever in the future going to say, this is the loophole I want to use to get under the hotel. I'm going to build a property, leave it vacant for 20 some years, and then apply for a hotel. I think it's a very unique situation. And so that is my motion.
Oh my, I think I need to second that one.
It's the longest motion that I think the planning's gonna have to deal with.
Just to clarify, Guy, is this a request or motion limiting this use to 10 bedrooms? Because a hotel use doesn't have a limitation on the number of bedrooms.
Yes, and I thought that was explicit in the plan of operation, which I think is binding, and if there's any doubt about that, I would if the staff asks you to make that in any more binding, will you do that?
Absolutely. The plan of operation and the agreement to go through commercial site plan review with the staff, which will cover the ADA question that was raised, will all be part of the agreed to self-imposed condition by the petitioner.
My understanding of our rules is that things that are presented to us as part of it are going to be binding. Does the staff have any concern about the ability to enforce those restrictions as currently stated? Okay. And the staff indicated that they were comfortable with those conditions as presented.
I'm seeing under the plan of operation that it's saying traffic generation will be minimal with only 10 guest rooms. The guests will be arriving, departing at scheduled hours. I'm not seeing where it says that the site will only ever maintain 10 bedrooms and will not be increased. Distinction between the petitioner's variant request is the lodging will be only for the entire 10-bedroom home or will not be offered for an individual room or guest. But I think it would be helpful just to clarify to say there will be no additions of bedrooms to this property in the future, or that the hotel use is only for 10 bedrooms.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that if they want to do 11 or 12, they have to come back.
We would agree to that because I do believe the septic was designed and constructed to meet the 10, and it's pretty much used all the area that's available to get that septic in there. So absolutely, we would agree maximum 10 bedrooms and not to be expanded.
I would add that as a condition of my motion, that the use be limited to a maximum of 10 bedrooms for this permitted hotel.
Okay. Is there a,
Oh, I'll second that.
okay, motion and a second. Okay, so the motion is to approve VAR 22-38, a use variance for 8482 South Fairfax Road for a hotel use per chapter 802. And the conditions are as follows: that the petitioner submit a commercial site plan for review, which will include a review of ADA standards and septic system capacity. And also condition 2, that the hotel use is limited to 10 bedrooms and is subject to the letter, petitioner letter and plan of operation as shown in the BZA packet. And as stated with the findings presented by Guy Loftman, the BZA member. So a motion in favor is a motion to approve with the conditions. Skip Daly,
Yes.
okay. Guy Loftman,
Yes,
and then Dee Owens is recused. Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
No.
Okay, the motion carries 3-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good
Yeah.
luck. Thank you.
sir, I've got your,
And
Thank you for
if we would
preparing that.
like
It's very
to
helpful.
address the agenda item that's been requested for continuance, I've consulted with legal. We're able to address that first if you want to continue that item. I think there are people on the Zoom meeting that would like to attend for that meeting or for that agenda item. So we could address whether that gets continued and then go back to the regularly scheduled agenda for this second item.
Okay, and is that item number 7 on our agenda?
It is.
Or is it
Yes,
number 6?
it's item number 7.
Okay, so item number 7 on our agenda is VAR 22-53. And this is the Joe Huff Design Standards Variance to Environmental Constraints Overlay Area 1 from Chapter 825 concerning 246.2 plus or minus acre parcels in Clear Creek Township, Section 7 and 12 at South Shady Side Drive. And I understand that a request for continuance has been submitted by the petitioner, but not within the required time period. The required time period, according to our regulations, says that a request for continuance of a petition must be made by the petitioner 7 business days prior to the scheduled Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And any request for continuance after that 7-day period of time must be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals at that stated meeting. The criteria for continuance would be that the Board of Zoning Appeals finds just and good cause for continuance. And so with that being said, when was the request for continuance submitted by Mr. Huff's representatives?
Yes, so we had a continuous request made yesterday at 1:58 PM before the scheduled hearing tonight. And as you stated, Margaret, there needs to be just cause. And so the BZA may vote to allow the continuance, which in that case, it would go to the February 1st, 2023 meeting agenda, or you can vote to keep it on the agenda and that therefore we would still hear the case.
And did they give a reason? The petitioner, did they give a reason for the continuance at that late hour?
I believe that they are on the call. The message that you have here on the screen is what we received. So it says, I would like to delay the meeting until February 1st. Please let me know if this is okay. Thank you. And so we sent them back the information for the rules of procedure, and I believe they have a chance to speak as well.
Yes, but they're item number 7 on the agenda. So
Just to speak to whether they can be continued.
and how many minutes would we normally give for that?
So you're able to set minutes, the limit of each petition at the beginning of each case. So
Okay.
it says that the chairperson may set time limits for individual responses before each case.
So I am willing to give Mr. Huff or Mr. Huff's representatives 3 minutes to justify the request for a continuance, and then the board will discuss and either grant or deny the request for continuance. And if the request for continuance is denied, then we would hear them at item number 7 on the agenda tonight.
I agree with everything you said. Would we have an opportunity for people in the public who are here who wanted to speak in favor or opposed to make themselves known? Because that would.
For the continuance, I don't believe we would. We as a board would decide whether or not we give the Huffs and this particular item on the agenda, if we grant their request for continuance. And if the request for continuance is denied, then it would, the item would be discussed at item number 7 on the agenda. At that point, we would hear the public's arguments for or against the approval of the petition. If the item is continued to our February meeting, then the public would be able to speak in favor or in opposition to the petition at that time. So right now, we're giving them an opportunity to argue at this late hour for an approval for their request to continue the motion to February.
Did I hear staff say that there are people who want to comment on this?
There are, but it's for the actual variance petition, as Margaret mentioned, so
But
they,
if there are people who've showed up and want to talk about this and they're here tonight, that affects how much I would have to be talked into it. So I'm glad to know that, and I'm glad to hear the petitioner or the petitioner's representative make their case when you're for the continuance, when you want to have that happen.
Okay, and so let's hear 3 minutes from the petitioner or the petitioner's representative. And if that person could be unmuted, we'll give you 3 minutes to state the case as to why it should be continued. And then we'll see how many members of the public are here for this case, and then we'll make our decision.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Jewel Lee with Taft, Stettinius and Hollister in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I appear to this commission in front of you on behalf of the Huffs. We have asked for a continuance in this because I don't think that this is a normal variance that even this board is familiar with. On December 28th at 4:20 p.m., we received word from the staff of the staff report being uploaded. That staff report contained 48 pages in it. You have 3 other variances on this docket, which total 40 pages of staff report. Those 48 pages include a lot of information on which would need to be information by the Huffs to rebut against some of the information that was presented by the staff. When we look at that December 28th date, if we count today as an actual business day prior to this hearing, we're talking about 4 business days of notice because we had a holiday in there where the Monday was a holiday. As such, in order for us to have filed a petition for continuance, which is we are basing upon the staff report that was provided on the 28th, it would have been impossible for us to meet that 7-day business day deadline. When we look at those rules that were then provided to Mr. Huff regarding that is up on the board right now, number 5, the request for the 7 business days, it strikes me as a little bit odd and almost hypocritical that the board would consider that rule when the board right now is not even following the remainder of the rules that it had set forth. When you look at the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure, Article 1, Number 1 specifically indicates that your meetings will be on the first Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. You chose not to follow that rule. You set it for 5:30. What the Huffs are asking for in this situation is not a situation in which he's going to gain an advantage. It is to overcome an undue hardship of responding to a 48-page staff report in less than 4 business days for the use of his property. I don't believe that anybody else will be unduly burdened. They will have the opportunity to remonstrate against the variant should they wish to on the first. What this does is it allows the Huffs the opportunity to provide a full case for this board to consider in what I truly believe to be a unique situation where we have a 48-page staff report on the variant. Thank you. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Owens has her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does the law or the rules say it's a 7 business day advance or a 7-day advance?
7-day.
That's what I thought. So
It's 7 business days.
It does say 7 business days.
Pardon me?
It
Jack?
does say 7 business days is what is in the rules of procedure.
okay, and so there was not time to review it is what the contention is. I reviewed it now. I'm not trying to make a rebuttal, but okay, that helps. I just wanted to know exactly what the word said.
Yeah, I'll read the paragraph 5 again. It says a request for continuance of a petition must be made by the petitioner 7 business days prior to the scheduled Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Any request for continuance after that 7-day period of time must be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And now, is there another paragraph here, Ms. Nestor Jelen, that I'm missing that says we owe them 7 days for something else, 7 business days for something else, Mr. Schilling? No.
So in any case that people want to offer a request to continue, if they do give it to us before they request a continuance 7 days prior, 7 business days prior, we just put it on the agenda and that's what is posted and approved. So they're able to do that without a vote by the BZA members.
Yes.
It's within that 7 business day time period that this rule is coming into play. And any petitioner can continue their case. I believe it's up to 3 times, but I'll double check the rules of procedure on
Yes.
that.
Okay. And Mr. Schilling, is there anything that I need to have clarified for me?
No, like I say, generally, or as Jackie said, we allow people to continue for any reason whatsoever up to 3 times. It's just because this came within 7 business days of the meeting that we were required to put it on your or bring this issue before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to see here in this room a show of hands of people who are here for this particular case to speak either for or against this particular case. And this is concerning the Huff property. Is there anyone in the room? Or is there anyone online? There's one person online, a Nicholas Port, who is here to speak either for or against the petition. But okay, so that being, there's another person. So there are 3 people who are here to speak either for or against the petition. And Mr. Daly has his hand raised too. So we're as a board discussing whether or not we grant the continuance. Mr. Daly?
Hi, I'm not so certain why we need to be so contemptuous about this matter. Seems pretty reasonable. We've been in a holiday season. He didn't get his information until just before the New Year weekend. We want all the information before us before we make decisions. On a number of occasions, we've had people come out for, people come out against, and we found that we haven't had all the information before us. I have personally requested that we continue matters because we have not had all the information before us, and we want to make intelligent decisions. It's obvious that Mr. Huff, who is the petitioner for this, is not prepared at this point to make that decision, to provide us that information, partially based on the timing. Giving him the benefit of the doubt at this point is something I'm willing to do, and I would like to motion that we offer that continuance and an apology to those who have stepped forward and thank them for being active in wanting to express themselves, and that if they cannot come forward if a continuance is granted, that we will weigh in their letters of support or opposition. That's my motion.
So, Mr. Daly, you made a motion to continue, is that correct? To grant the request for continuance?
May
That
I
is correct.
ask staff a question
Yes,
before?
Mr. Lockman has one question to ask of staff, and then
Is it any dispute that that December 28th was the day they would have received the staff report that they're concerned with?
The packet was sent out December 28th. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
okay, so Mr. Daly has made a motion to grant the request for continuance. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And if you would please call the roll, Ms. Nestor-Jelen?
Sure. The motion is to continue the Joe Huff design standard variance to the environmental constraint overlay area 1 from chapter 825. A vote in favor is a vote to continue this item to the February 1st, 2023 BZA meeting. Guy Lockman?
Yeah, it seems to me that basic due process means they should have sufficient time to prepare. They haven't. So under those circumstances, my apologies to the people in the public who are here, but I'm going to vote in favor of the continuance.
Okay. D. Owens?
Yes,
Pamela Davidson?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes,
Skip Daly?
Yes.
Okay, so motion carries 5-0 that they will be continued to the February 1st, 2023 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
so with apologies to the members of the public who made the effort to appear before us tonight. We invite you February 1st to make your comments before us, and we thank you for your attempts tonight. Thank you. Okay, we move on now to items number 2 and 3. The Pesco Tourist Home Condition number 48B, Design Standards Variance from Chapter 802, and the Pesco Design Standard Variance to the minimum side setback from Chapter 804 concerning 6.63 plus or minus acre parcel in Bloomington Township, Section 31 at 7185 North Maple Grove Road. And Mr. Pesco, if you are here, or if your representative is here, would you please come to the podium and sign in? Mr. Pesco, you're online. If you would kindly raise your right hand and state your name, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, my name is Nicholas Pesco, and I do.
Oh, thank you so much. And you have 15 minutes to discuss your requests with us.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to hear my appeal on this process. Not that you need to know much backstory, but my father is turning 80 years old this year. And we didn't have a great relationship when I was growing up. But one of the memories that I distinctly remember with my dad was him taking to my first Indiana University basketball game together. And we stayed the night in Bloomington. And that was one of the fonder memories I've had of a childhood that didn't always go so well. Fast forward 20 years later, I'm living in Louisville, Kentucky, and I attended Indiana University. And my relationship with my dad is much better. And he's turning 80 years old this year. And I want to spend some time with him before he passes. So I originally purchased this property to be able to spend some time with him and attend Indiana University sporting events and weekends together in a cabin. And the reason for my request to be granted a short-term variance is simply that I was hoping to offset some of the costs of being able to use this this cabin for me and my dad. Unfortunately, when I purchased the property, I didn't do as much due diligence as I should have. I saw a home on 6 acres, basically in the middle of nowhere, and I had no idea that you know, it was going to be so close to the property line next door. I have spoken with the neighbor and have gotten to know her over the last couple months, Mrs. Calvin. Her and her late husband, Mr. Tate, have owned that property since 1984 continuously. They have never built any structure on it. It's my understanding that the nearest structure that could possibly be built would be 133 feet away, just due to the grading and the slope behind the property. There's only one property that you can see from mine, and it's across the street, and it's only visible when the leaves have fallen. So it's very private, and you know, I'm not a professional landlord or a big company. I'm not trying to make a quick buck or you know, make a large profit for this. I was just hoping to spend time with my dad and hoping to offset the costs a little bit. And I just never realized the mess I got myself into with this. So I humbly ask that if possible, you could have mercy on a son who was just trying to do right by his dad and grant this variance. And the only thing I could suggest is perhaps if the Calvins do decide to build a property or sell the property, that perhaps the variance could have a condition that it could be taken away if something was built on the adjoining property. My goal is to not cause a nuisance or be a disturbance to any of the neighbors, even though it's very private. You know, I just want to make use of the property mostly myself and offset some of the costs. And unfortunately, if I'm not granted this variance, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that, which would be a shame. So again, thank you so much for hearing me and listening and for your time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Pesco. And I turn now to my fellow members of the Board of Zoning Appeals. And if there are questions for Mr. Pesco or of staff, if you would be so kind as to raise your hand.
I have a question for staff. So the problem is that his neighbor is too close. And if the neighbor built, then there would be a problem. So it's if. He's too close and the neighbor, we have a note in here that says the neighbor says she has no intention of building, but she's a widow. She will sell that property at some point. He's also just said to us that he's willing to have the variance disappear upon the eventuality of a sale or a plan to build. So there's a remedy if that problem presents itself. But it seems like it's a potential issue that hasn't presented itself in actuality, but could So therefore, that led to the staff recommendation. Have I kind of got that right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm looking at page 25 of our packet where it says tourist home shall be located no closer than 200 feet from any adjoining principal use, but that's not the problem, as I understand the staff report. The problem is, and I don't, and then I want to go back to the site plan, that it's 200, that it's the setback, that it's from the adjoining property setback line. Is that the problem? Now, let me see if I can get back to that site plan, which, okay, I know you've got it there, and I'm not sure I can see where the so where does it intrude into the setback? Is there?
So it should be located on the left-hand side, the 160 feet. We estimate that it'd be approximately between 140 to 160 feet.
So that is about
So there's
75%.
Yeah, so there's two requests here. One
Yes.
is that the tourist home has to be 200 feet
Yes.
from any adjoining principal use not otherwise used as a tourist home.
Yes,
When a property is vacant, we measure from the nearest setback of that adjoining property. And this site is a bit constrained by buildable area. So that's the first variance request. The second variance request, Guy, I think you're talking about is the side setback. And on the screen is their site plan. That's the northern property line. And I believe that we determined they were about 40 feet from that property line instead of the required 50 feet.
so that's about 80%. They're about 80% of
Okay,
the
so it's
required set.
40 feet from one, and
140 from the other, compared to
and the
200.
other 140 from the other, it should be 200.
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
thank you, Sean.
Also, we got my little virtual hand up.
Yes, thank you,
Um,
Ms.
Okay, thank you. It's also, it's a slope problem, is how I read it. Could staff address that?
So D, the tourist home that the residence that they want to convert into a tourist home is built out. So they don't plan to do any further development. So the slope concern for the property to the northwest is just that if the property to the northwest was completely flat, they would actually be even closer to the home or the proposed home site than what is shown here at 160 feet. So because they're constrained by buildable area directly north of the site, we've created a diagonal distance line because we know that based on our ordinance, they wouldn't be able to build in that red area anyways.
And I wondered if you'd be so kind as to discuss in more detail the thought of bringing the septic into compliance and what's missing there and what are the current issues?
So currently, pending a commercial site plan review, we particularly are looking for the septic to be brought into compliance. We believe that it isn't currently, but it is our understanding that the petitioner would like to request 2 variances before taking on that site plan.
I see. Thank you very much. Are there further questions of staff or of Mr. Pesco before we open it up to the public?
Not me.
Okay, and if there are none, I'd like to see if there are any members of the public either here in the room or online or on the telephone, who would like to speak in favor of this petition. You would have 3 minutes to speak. You just need to either raise your virtual hand, press *9 on the phone, or come to the podium in this room. If there's no one, I would like to open this up for people and members of the public who are in opposition to this request. If you are, please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand, or press *9 on the telephone. Okay, we bring it back now to discussion among the board members to see if we'd like to approve or deny these 2 variances. One is for the tourist home cabin, condition number 48B. Staff has recommended denial, or the minimum side setback, and staff has recommended denial. And again, we have all the conditions that we must meet in order to approve this and to approve these variances. So, Ms. Davidson?
Well, the facts of this, I can surely understand the son wanting to have a property here to spend time with his father and then to have income from time to time to help offset the cost of that second home for that limited purpose. I appreciate that he's talked to the neighbor about the proximity and his sensitivity to having the variance disappear should the ownership of that adjacent property change. So I appreciate both those things. But it seems like it wouldn't be unreasonable to allow him to do these things.
I missed something maybe. Is he saying if the adjoining property is sold or if his property is sold?
He said if the adjoining property is sold or if they choose to build upon it. Those were the 2 conditions he said in his few
Okay.
comments. He said nothing about his plans.
His selling the property.
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So you're leaning to granting this, is that what you're saying?
I'm leaning that way, yes.
It's tough because he bought a property that he so appropriately pointed out didn't do due diligence, and now he wants to we don't know whether he would have bought the property if he had known that. Maybe not, maybe the staff is there any, could this be granted on the condition that if the adjoining property was sold or any future adjoining property owner wanted to build, that this would disappear?
Based on my conversation with legal counsel, I don't believe we could condition anything like that. Variances run with the land. And so the next step after this variance would be a site plan. So they would actually be given, the use is allowed. It's that they don't meet the design standards. So if they wanted to submit some sort of written commitment to self-regulate the use, we're not sure how enforceable that could be, or if that would be attainable by staff to even recognize when that would occur.
Well, I think it's great that he's trying to be up here to back IU sports and be close to his dad. But I think if he wanted to do this as a commercial venture, you need to exercise due diligence. And he didn't, as they say, exercise due diligence, even though that was, I think, at least at the back of his mind. And these ordinances are put in place to be enforced, not to be waived from my perspective. So I'm leaning against it. Glad to hear what anybody else has to say.
I also am leaning against it just because even though maybe the current neighbor in the adjacent property isn't here tonight, if that property sells, they would be subject to a variance next door to them that they didn't have an opportunity to contest. But I see that Mr. Daly has his hand raised, so I'd like to recognize him.
I have a question for staff. Am I missing in the packet? Often staff will say, hey, this isn't allowed the way that the petitioner would like it, but we can foreseeably see X, Y, Z happening in an alternative manner. And is there no alternative manner suggested by staff at this point, or am I just not seeing it?
Skip, are you talking about a recommendation and then if approved, these conditions would apply? Or are you saying here's another pathway to get to a short-term rental?
The latter.
Okay. This is truly the main pathway for this petitioner to get a short-term rental. There is a long-term rental, which is more than 30 days that the petitioner could do without the need for any variances. It's just that the short-term rental, the tourist home or cabin is what has these additional standards applied.
Okay.
Ms. Owens?
Thank you. The issue that I see is I don't care who owns the property to the northwest. There's a very small area to build because of the gigantic slopes. And that means anybody who would come in later on by an estate or whatever would have to build close to the tourist home. And you can't just say, oh, well, then it won't be a tourist home anymore unless the owner, I guess, decide to give that. As Jackie said, it runs with the property. So I don't see how we can do a design variance and then just hope it might go away later. I don't see that happening. No.
Okay, is there a motion? I think we've.
I move to deny variance 20-22-45A and variance 22-45B Pesco tourist home condition number 48B design standard variance and setback from chapter 804. Because this does meet the zoning requirements.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to deny both VAR 22-45A and VAR 22-45B. The Pesco Tourist Home Condition 48B, which is a 200-foot distance requirement, and as well as the Pesco Design Standard variance to minimum side setback from chapter 804. A vote in favor is a vote to deny both variances. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
No.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Skip Daly.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Guy Loftman.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is denied 4-1.
I know the time, well, I'll wait until the end. I have a comment to make, but it doesn't pertain to this case. It pertains to a comment made in a previous, but at the end of the meeting, I'll have a comment to make.
Okay.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is item number 4, VAR 22-51, R&H Petroleum Inc. Off-street parking variance from chapter 806 concerning 1.81 plus or minus acre parcel in Richland Township, section 31 at 9817 West State Road 43. And I believe our R&H Petroleum is either here in person or online or a representative.
Yes.
To present the case to us?
Yes, the petitioner is here.
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
welcome back. If you would be so kind as to sign in and with your name and your address, if you would be so kind.
You want me to write it down here?
If you would sign in, I'm sorry, did you say there's no pen?
I can't hear you.
Did you say there's no pen?
No,
Here, this gentleman. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So if you would be so kind as to state your name and raise your right hand and your name, sir? Yes, and would you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Yes, and I did not catch your name. I'm sorry.
My first name is Ravi and last name is Pal.
Raviel Patel,
Pal,
Pal.
yes.
It's very nice to see you again. Okay, and if you would, you have 15 minutes to make your case to us. And we might have questions at the end for you.
Actually, I'm building a gas station on 9817 West State Road 43. And it's been doing for last 4 years. And I filed this motion because the parking space is too, it's narrow, you know.
Yes.
So I talked to Jackie and she said it doesn't looks good, you know. So we don't need that many parking spots, at least we need like 3 or 4 actually. And it's like right now we have 11 and it's really like, and behind the parking, we need a 15 feet space and we don't have because there's a retention pond.
Yes.
So the only way we can do if we reduce 2 parking spots from 9 to like 4 or 11 to 4. That's the only way we can do.
Yes. So is that your presentation?
Yes.
And do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for him?
My question is, how long have you been operating the convenience store? And have you ever run out of parking spots or have you always had enough with the fewer than 10 that
I
you would
have a
plan
gas
for?
station. I have only 5 spots in Bloomington, one of them. Never have any issue. People park on the pumps, they leave, you know. And the customer, like, we need like 4. 4 is pretty good. We can park still 8 cars there, you know. 4 on the pumps and 4 on the parking spots. So I've been doing gas station for last 17 years in Bloomington. So never have issue. So this is in the county too. It's not in the like city limits.
Yes. Does anyone else? I see that Ms. Owens has a question for Mr. Powell.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, I've driven past there quite a few times and it looks quite adequate to me. I can't imagine that there would be at that particular intersection that there would be not enough parking spots. So just having looked at it, I think it looks okay.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Does anyone else have questions for Mr. Powell?
Not I.
Okay, and are there members of the public who would like to speak on this in favor of this petition?
Okay.
If so, please come to the podium, raise your hand on a virtual Zoom or press *9 on the telephone. And are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the podium, press *9 or raise your virtual hand. Do you see anyone? So we come back to the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and for further discussion and or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve variance 22-51 for R&H Petroleum Inc. off-street parking variance from chapter 806. in Richland Township, section 31 at 9817 West State Road 43.
Seconded.
That's been seconded.
Okay, it's been
Okay.
moved and seconded to approve variance 22-51 R&H Petroleum Inc. Off-street parking for the minimum number of parking spaces needed under chapter 806. A vote in favor is a vote to approve the variance. Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Skip Daly,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you
good
very
to
much.
see
I
you
really
again, and thank you for serving our
Thank you.
community. Thank you. Okay, now, sir, yes, you've been sitting here patiently throughout our meeting, so please come in, sign in, and
Hi, my name is Harold Binkley, and I have a question regarding this same location, not the parking, but I don't know when they started remodeling this location. There was an issue on the septic system, and I know they've done a lot of landscaping in the area, but I've never seen anything done with the septic system in that area, and I'm just curious of whether that has been looked into or not.
and Ms. Crecelius, do you know if that, or Ms. Nestor-Jelen?
Yes, so in speaking with Mr. Powell, it sounds like the state has asked that he go ahead and submit and get approval for installing a commercial septic system. So they did go ahead and say that his current septic system needs to be replaced, and that's something that we're looking at. The site is not open or operational yet, so they're looking to get the septic system replaced with a commercial septic.
Okay, that's my question, and I appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your patience tonight, and we really appreciate your concerns as community members and your willingness to stick it out, you know, and to draw your concerns to our attention. So thank you, Mr.
Okay, I live next door to this station, and in the past, the septic system, well, they didn't even have a public restroom, but what little they did have, the septic system was running down the hill onto
Oh,
me.
my. Oh,
That's
my.
the reason I had that concern.
Well, we appreciate your letting us know. And now that for the most part, I believe, I see a gentleman here who has not spoken. You're just here to watch and observe. Okay, well, thank you for coming today. And but during the request for the continuance and the discussion of the request for the continuance concerning the Huff property, and that was item number 7 on our agenda. Mr. Chuya Lee, the attorney for Mr. Huff, noted that our rules of procedure state that our meetings begin at 6 p.m. However, those rules of our procedure were amended at prior meetings. We voted on it, and our prior meetings have said that we voted on it and we determined that the new time period would be 5:30 p.m. and that is announced every year. And it's announced in the public notices in the newspaper that the meetings begin at 5:30 p.m. every year. And at the beginning of our meeting tonight, we made you introduced the rules and the evidence into the meeting, and we voted on them. And in my opinion, that that contains the amendment, the rules as adopted and amended by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, even though it would be nice to have 5:30 written on this rules of procedure, this has been amended by subsequent meeting minutes from the Board of Zoning Appeals, if I'm correct, right?
I think you may actually, we can go ahead and vote since it's an administrative item to
Yes.
go ahead and make that formal change. And we will, if you vote in favor, staff will go ahead and correct the rules of procedure to 5:30.
Yes, well, I'd like to move that, well, somebody else has to do it, but we've already done it in the past.
We do set out a meeting calendar and public notice. I don't think that there's any confusion regarding the
Yes.
start time. It's just that the rules of procedure are an additional document. And it would be
I
good to
see.
keep that updated. Yep.
I would like to make a motion that the County Board of Zoning Appeals meeting starts the first Wednesday of each month at 5:30 PM.
Is that a motion to amend our rules?
Is that is to and therefore amend our rules to so show.
And I
Thank you.
see that Mr. Daly has his hand raised.
I do. It's for a different matter. There's somebody that's trying to get our attention online, Ellen Papodi. So at some point, if you or the director could address that question, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, so
Motion on the floor.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the rules of procedure of the Board of Zoning Appeals under Article 1, meetings number 1, to read that the regular meetings of the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals Board shall be held on the first Wednesday of each month at 5:30 PM in Courthouse Meeting Room 315,
unless otherwise noted.
unless
Some-
otherwise noted.
Yes. Do you agree with that, Ms. Davidson? And
I
Ms.
totally concur with that.
All
Okay,
right.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and call the roll. Margaret Clemens.
yes,
Skip Daly,
Sure. Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0 to amend those rules of procedure, and we will get that amended and updated by the next meeting.
thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
And-
Staff.
But
Yes.
while we're talking about rules,
Oh, yes.
I've been interested in a consent agenda and I've looked at the city's rule on that. I'm ready to consider an amendment on that. Would you mind sending of all the members of the board copies of the rule, the current rules, just so I don't have to go through and try to find that? It would be nice to
Sure.
have our most up-to-date version of that
Yes.
handy.
Okay, and Skip Daly brought our attention to a person who would like to be recognized, and I believe that person's name is Steve. His hand is raised. And if tech services could unmute Mr. Steve.
Oh, well, that was not the person I had been I believe Ellen Popedy, and it looks like staff has responded. So if Steve has a question, I guess that's a separate matter.
Okay, so Ms. Ellen Popodi.
Yes,
Hi, yes, we'd like to hear from you, whatever it is you'd like to say.
well, I had attempted to join the meeting for the first item on your agenda, although I ended up having to work late today and wasn't able to make it. I'm a neighbor to that property and nobody's ever talked to me about it. And I guess I'm too late to have any effect now, but I would have liked to have had some say on whether you approved that variance for a hotel use next to my property by an entity that doesn't even live there and doesn't even live in the town of Bloomington, but.
So you would have been opposed to that.
I was opposed to that, yes.
I'm sorry, the matter was approved.
I saw that.
I'm sorry, Ms. Popodi. I'm sorry.
Yep, that happens.
Yes, and I don't know. Yes, well, thank you for letting us know that you, that is a matter that you are concerned about and that you were opposed to it.
Okay,
So let
thank you.
reflect that there was a remonstrator against that. Okay, and there was a Mr. Steve who had his hand raised.
It was by accident. It was in the
Oh,
chat.
sorry, Mr. Steve. Okay, so with that being said, is there anything else by staff?
I don't think so. We will go ahead and send out the rules of procedure, and for the next meeting, you will have the election of the chair and vice chair.
Yes,
And then we will proceed with the agendas
Perfect.
as published.
is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Anybody opposed? Okay. The Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you so much for all of your time and good thoughts.